Welcome, everyone. And once again, we are live. And for those of you that have been listening in or tuning in to these interviews, you will know that I am interviewing amazing people that I know. And you may recognize my guest here, Divina Franca Lanyon, because she's been on a few times and we always run out of time. So I keep having to get her back on by popular demand. So thank you, Divina Franca, for being on again and for being up for fielding live questions today.
Yes.
How are you doing over there in Canada?
Oh, great. Thank you, Kate. Thank you for having me again. And I'm excited to be here today to answer your questions and to connect and just to chit chat about just anything that comes through. So thank you for having me again. And thank you for asking for me to come on.
Well, I wanted you to come back on, obviously, for my own benefit, because I love listening to all that you have to say. But we had lots of questions that people kept asking. And I said, well, okay, then let's do a question and answer time. So if you're listening right now, and if you have a question for Divina Franca, please put them in the chat box. We'll do our best to answer them all. And we are, we can talk about many subjects, but you will see from the previous interviews that Franca, speaks really, passionately about children, about goddess. She's the president of the Modern Mystery School International. She is the leader of a master of many different modalities, so that there isn't anything, topic that we really can't touch on. So, sorry, Frank, I'm like, okay.
Well, now you really opened it up, Kate.
Well, you see, you've got alchemy, you've got Wicca, there's so many different things that we could chat about. So let's go for it. Okay, so we have a question. I would love to ask for Divina Franca's top tip on communicating between women and men so we can honor each other while still being heard. Thank you. That's from Dr. Anne Donnelly.
Okay. Great question. This is, communication, number one, is extremely difficult in our world. And even though we have text messaging, emailing, and all these other different devices, and how Facebook and Instagram, and the list goes on, but yet our communication is something that we struggle with every day. And it's either we struggle with between women and women, and we struggle with between women and men. And, I hope I can give some guidance on this part that makes sense, I guess I can say. And for us, for women and for men, I think a good place to start is to start from a place where we know who we are. And that we know what is it that we want. So as a woman, what is it that you want from having communication or a relationship with a man? And what does honor mean? So honor for me might mean something different for you. It might mean something different to Dr. Anne. It might mean just different. So that one word, that's another thing in our language, that one word may mean different things to all of us. And for a man, what does honor mean? Because for a man versus a woman, I am pretty sure that word honor means completely different, right? So as a woman, if in this instance, because of the question, if we are talking about communication with a man or a relationship with a man, then I, myself, or you, yourself as a woman, what is it that you want? What does that honor mean to you? And are you communicating it to the man? And as a woman, do you understand yourself? And do you understand your own energy and what that energy means as a woman? So what does our energy mean? What does it do? How does it flow when we speak? What is it that we're saying to each other? And then as a man too, right? For a man, he too has to understand what is it that he actually wants. What is it that what does he believe honor to be? Now, he can probably explain what honor means to a man versus a man, but what does it mean a man versus a woman? And I'm not sure if honor in this case is the proper wording for it. Because when we speak of a relationship between a man and a woman and their communication, a woman comes more from a place of wanting acceptance and appreciation. And a man doesn't come from that place. A man comes more from a place of wanting respect, right? So it's more of the understanding, who are you with? Who are you? How does your energy flow as a woman? What does honor mean to you? And are you communicating that? What is it that you want? You want honor. You want honor for each other, but are you telling each other that? Right? That piece of the communication is very important. We can't hope, or we can't magically think it's going to happen. And then when it doesn't happen, then, things, there's anger, there's upset, there's hurt. So we have to actually communicate what it is that we want. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and it's so interesting you talk about that, because immediately what was coming up for me then was, as a woman, we sometimes want the men to guess as if they know what they should be doing, and then we'll give them cryptic clues or
Right. There's this, we call it like a game. We play a game, and if he says this is what this means. If he doesn't do this, this is what it means or it doesn't mean. And really, that is just, we're leaving it up to assumption. And then we're working according to the assumption rather than what is actually really happening or not happening, right? So we start playing kind of this fool's game. And then this is where we get hurt. So we have to be very clear in our communication and understand one another by being honest and saying, hey, this is what I want. This is where I come from, and just knowing how that energy flows between the two. Now, if the energy doesn't flow properly, it doesn't mean that the two are bad people. It just means that between the two, it just doesn't flow properly. That's all it means. But leading it up to a guessing game, like you said, Kate, ladies, it doesn't work. Because then we as the woman are working according to that guessing game. And that's not really what we should be working towards. We should be working towards what is actually there in front of us, what is actually happening.
I mean, my goodness, I can imagine that would solve many, many arguments. Just that one piece of advice, know what it is that you want and then communicate it.
Yes. I feel, and I'm not saying that this is what it is, but I feel that a lot of the arguments come from the miscommunication and the assumptions that we each know what we're talking about, or what we each feel, or whatnot, right? We may have said one thing but meant something else, and things happen that way. So I think a lot of that comes from the miscommunication between the two.
Amazing. Thank you for that. We have another question that's come in, and it is, I would love to ask, look, I can even share it on my screen.
There it is.
Oh, look at that. I would love to ask about balancing work and motherhood as a woman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. So there's one thing I think I can relate to, obviously, other women, but also relate to other women that are moms and that are working and juggling many things. And I think the one thing that we face a lot is guilt. And now fathers face it, but they express it and they take it in differently than mom does. And that's obviously natural. It's a natural thing. They take it in differently from how mom would. And what do we do when we're overwhelmed? How do we balance it? We always have to bring ourselves back to center. So we always have to have that place where we bring ourselves when we feel overwhelmed and say, okay, what is it that I'm doing? Why am I doing it this way? Do I have to do it this way? And why am I feel so overwhelmed? And that, you know, within our language of our training, we call it the middle pillar. And we always bring it back to center. And you have to bring yourself back to center when you feel overwhelmed. Because when you're overwhelmed, we are inclined to try to make more decisions. But truthfully, we should take the time to clear our mind first before we make further decisions and further potentially overwhelming ourselves. So we can take yourself to that middle place, whatever that middle place is, where you can recenter yourself and ask yourself questions. Why am I doing this? Why am I so overloaded? Why do I feel I have to do all of this? Why is it that I'm trying to fit this in, all of this in? And I can relate to that question because I was one of those people, and sometimes I still am. And I remember when I first had my son, and we just opened up headquarters, and I was responsible for running headquarters along with my husband. But he was traveling a lot, and here I am having a newborn and trying to run the center, having a newborn. And here I am thinking that I can live life the same way that I was living it before having a child. And then when I realized one day that when I was leaving the door that I actually needed to take my son with me before I left, then I started to think, saying, wait a minute, my life, I can't do this. And did I overschedule myself? Did I feel overwhelmed? Did I try to do all these things to make sure I'm keeping up? I didn't. But I started falling apart. So what I had to do is I had to start reorganizing my life. And this is what we have to do: reorganize our life. Take out the things that take up your time but don't matter. There's nothing that you're working towards. It's just there, taking up the time, and it's there because it's making you feel good, right? It's there because it's making me feel good, but not really. It's just taking up my time, and I'm getting overwhelmed, right? Then have help. It is a very hard one. It was a very hard one for me to have help. I felt like I had to do it. If this is my child, then I have to do it all because I decided to have my child. So therefore, why am I going to leave that responsibility up to someone else? And from my upbringing, you take care of your own child. You don't go looking for a nanny or for a babysitter. You don't do that. That's like a big no-no. That's looked at as an incapability. But I had to really think about that, and I had to break free from what the patterning was then, because that was a certain kind of mentality. And getting the help is what helped me not feel overwhelmed, because the things that I wanted to do were getting done, and I started to realize that I didn't have to do it all. I started to realize that I can actually delegate. And yes, I do have a babysitter, but the babysitter there is to take care of my child. They're not there to raise my child. They're just there to be there when I'm not there. And so I can accomplish things in my life that I want to accomplish and still have my son and still raise my son and be a part of his life and do all these wonderful things that us moms want to do. But when we start to overwhelm our schedule or our life to think that we can do it all and that we need to do it all, we will start to lose ourselves. And we're not going to, it's not about becoming a perfect mom. So this is one thing. We're striving to be a perfect mother. And if I were to ask, what is a perfect mom? What does it entail? What is a perfect mother? And that was one thing I really had to ask myself. And so I decided that it's not about being a perfect mother. It's about wanting to inspire my child and what to do in life. And so, I think the overwhelming is probably because there's too many things on your plate or on our plate. And I think because we also feel the guilt is also making us feel overwhelmed. Okay, because even when things are perfect, we still feel guilty. Right? So when does it end, or does it end? or what will make it go away, right? So, and there was another thing I learned, and that was it definitely takes a village to raise a child. And there is so much truth to that. And I had no idea what that meant until I had my son. So you know, it does take a village, right? You can do all these things and have what you want to have, things that matter, things that will give you success, that will bring in the fruits, but have a good group of people around you that's going to help you get there. So we don't always feel this overwhelming feeling of just not being able to keep up. So, and not losing ourselves, because when mom loses herself, how effective are we really being then for our child? How you know, under what stressors are we operating from? And then you have to look at it, what are we teaching our child? Because the child, we have to understand our children are like sponges. And for all of us that have kids, and Kate, you know this, they're like sponges. We don't really have to say anything. They can already tell by the energy, right? So, you know, we have to look at that too. What is it? What kind of mom, you know, how do I want this all to look? And what is it doing for me when I feel so overwhelmed? And just reorganizing your life, and always bring yourself back to that center to help you, so you can reset yourself.
Yeah, it really, that makes such a lot of sense. And, you know, really, and it's so simple again, isn't it? It's, you know, what we build up in our mind to be that perfect mother, or that, you know, it's a very different story when you're in the thick of it and there's chaos around you with, you know, that's all going on.
And I think before, you know, my mother's time, your mother's time, Kate, you know, all of our mother's time back in the day, I think they had their own difficulties of things, but there was also an understanding of where they stood in the whole big picture of it all. And I think right now for us, we're under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure of what society is wanting to see from us. And when we look at it from that point of view, well, society is never going to be satisfied. They're never going to be satisfied. And now, like, we have all these kind of titles. I was so surprised of all the titles that we start to see that we put, you know, moms under, you know, or being a parent, you know, so that alone is also pressure. So I think bringing ourselves back to that center place is important. And not to really fall into what society thinks we should do or should be, or where we should go and how we should look and all that kind of stuff.
We've got another question, but I have a question that somebody actually gave to me beforehand, which I think kind of follows on about, you know, working with children and you know, how can I help my son to respect women as he has no father figure to look up to? And I think it's kind of following on from that.
Right. And that's a really interesting question, because that question alone, we have to ask, what are we trying to say? Well, you know, how do I get my son to respect women? But is that the only thing that you want your son to do? Do we want your son to respect women? Yes. But I think on a whole of it is, how do we raise him, or how do you raise him to be a good man overall? Because for me, I've asked myself that question too. But I do have a little reservation to it, because of course, I want him to grow up and be a man and respect women, but are women going to respect him? So moms out there that have girls, right? Are you going to teach your little girl how to grow up and respect men? Right? And because of course I want him to respect women, but what happens if he runs into a woman that doesn't respect him? So, and yes, the father figure part is an element, because as a mom, even though some of us moms think we can't fill in the footsteps or the shoes of a male influence. We can't. So when we look at it, we say, okay, well, I want, this is what I want for my son. And what you want for your son, and in this case, for this question, how do I help my son respect women? You as his mom need to respect him and show him what respect means. Because often us adults, and we are famous for this, all of us are famous for this, for us parents that have children out there, we will tell our kids to not do a certain something, but us as adults, we end up doing it. And they see that and they say, hey, you told me not to do that, but you're doing it, right? You say thank you. And then you say that, then an adult doesn't say thank you. And the child's like, well, you didn't say thank you. Why do I need to say thank you? Right? So I think a good place to start is to show your son respect. So he sees what it is and he understands it. And then communicate with him. Communicate him about doing good deeds in life. And little boys, because I have experience with little boys, they love to help. They love to help. And communicating and teaching, because as mom, you are his first teacher. Teaching him the please and the thank you, but teaching him what respect is by giving him respect, but also teaching him what certain things in life mean. Right? We are under the assumptions we treat children as little adults, but they're not little adults. They're children. They don't have the filters that we have. They sometimes children can be mean. They can, but they also can be totally honest. And they don't mean anything other than it just being an honesty, right? But the father figure part, is it that the child has no male figure in his life at all? Because sometimes a little boy can, and that male aspect may not be their father, but it may be their grandfather, it might be their uncle, it might be a neighbor, it might be a friend that they can kind of see and look and maybe look up to or go to for support, right? And that's another piece we need to communicate. So communication is extremely important, right? And also to understand who your child is, who your little boy is. What are his gifts? What are his talents? What is his heart? Who is he? And working it from there and honoring who he is and what he is potentially here to do, because he is here to do something. And if we show our little boys respect, I will guarantee that he will grow up to not only respect women, but to just respect other humans, right? And he'll have that background and saying that mom always taught me, right? Mom always taught me, mom always told me, sort of thing.
I love that. And it really goes to show that, if, as a mother, if we are engaging in healthy relationships with other men and women, then that, as you just said, is modeling to our children. So immediately, the care that we're taking over ourselves with the relationship that we're having, with whoever it is, the next door neighbor or, as a friend or what, the children are seeing that all the time, and the way that we interact and the way that we respect. So I love that. Because it's, again, so simple.
Yes, because in this big case, because we're talking about a son, you want to empower them, right? We can't say, well, you need to respect no matter what, and at the same time, if they don't treat you properly, you take it. Do you know what I mean by that? So as humans, as a child, as a man, as a woman, we need to be empowered and stand on our own, and we need to stand up for what we believe in. So we also want to teach him to stand up what he believes in. And it doesn't mean that he's going to be disrespectful, just means that he's empowered and that he has strength to him. You want him to have strength. And if his strength is respected and it's shown from when he's a child, that he will grow up to be confident in that. And sometimes, confidence is a kind of a different category of things, I think. But, you want him to have that strength within him, and to know what to do in certain life situations, on how he treats people and how people treat him. And that's very much also for adults. The way we treat people is the way people are going to treat us. It's this energy flow that goes out there and that comes back, goes out there and comes back. So I think that helps.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. There's a question come in. How do we best model for other women how to shift away from the hardcore feministic approach that emerged in the 1970s, that has broken down the archetypes of both how to be a man and how to be a woman?
Okay, let me just read this again, Kate.
Yeah.
How to best model. Okay.
For other women to shift away from that hardcore feminist approach. I mean, this is interesting because this came up in a situation with my husband, who opened the door for a lady who was carrying coffees. And so he opened the door for her, and she stopped and gave him the biggest telling off and said, "How dare you open the door for me? I am more than capable of doing that." Even though she had 2 coffees in her hands. And he was obviously very embarrassed, because he thought that, he was doing the right thing. And so, I don't know, that seems a bit extreme to me. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I think that word alone, feminist, is a little bit toxic, right? Coming from, I actually don't like the word, because it comes with so many attachments. And what feminist meant in the 1970s to what feminist means, later on in life, and to what it means now, it's all a bunch of, it's not the same. It's not. And, my mother-in-law, believe it or not, so if you know her, you would believe it. She was a hardcore feminist, but she came from the world and the thoughts of, I'm a woman, I want to be respected, I'm empowered, I am fully able, fully capable. But that does not mean you as a man don't respect me. That does not mean that you don't help me. Does that mean that you're not part of, hey, this family? That does not mean all these things. And she made it very clear. Yes, you respect women. Yes, you respect men. You do. She had a long list of things. It wasn't about, hey, I'm the woman, I'm fully capable, I don't need you, get out of my life. We don't really need you on the planet. Because from what I'm seeing from that question, and I know who it is, that's what's going on right now. And I think those people that are thinking that they are replicating or representing what once was, say, the 1970s, I think they have it all mixed up. I truly do. There may have been pieces. There may have been pieces where, yes, the women have lost this archetype to themselves. Yes, the women were like, rah, we don't need you, we are fully capable. But then there was the other big group of women of saying, yes, I am a woman and I'm capable, but we also need you in our life. And this is how we would love for you to treat us. But nowadays, it is, and I totally agree, how do we fix that? How do we fix it from a woman going from, I am a woman, I'm fully empowered, and looking at that woman and saying, yes, you are, but that doesn't mean that the man has no role or purpose on this planet, because it is obvious that they do. And it is more than them providing us to being able to have a child. It's not just that. And so us women, I think we have deep wounding. And I think we have misconstrued and polluted many things as to what we think is empowerment. And that is unfortunate, because I think right now, what us women, our goal is to help one another shift from that place of what we think is what empowerment means, because we are in a place where we're not even taking responsibility any longer. And we're saying that's empowerment. And that's saying, hey, we are important and we can do whatever we want. and we don't have to take responsibility, and we are capable, so we don't need you. And so that is pollution. That is coming from a woman, and if I can say this, that is wounded, that has a lot of trauma, that has been hurt, obviously, before in life. Many of us have, but it doesn't mean that because we have, that we choose not to heal and that we choose to deny another human being. Because if we are out there complaining about men, who is raising the men? Who is raising if we are doing it all, who is raising the men? We are. And those men that are young, that are going to become men, right? So the little man that's going to become the big man, are we there to honor them? Are we there to respect them? Are we there to support them, nurture them, love them? Is that what we're doing? Or are we having an agenda to turn them into something that they're not here to do? Men are men, women. Men are men. They are not here to be women. Their energy doesn't flow as a woman. I'm talking about a man, I'm talking about a woman. Everything outside of that is a totally different discussion. But men flow energy different than a woman, and woman flows energy differently from a man. And we need to honor that within each other. And no, we cannot, as a woman, thinking that we can do it on our own and deny another human being, in this case, a man. I think that's going to be detrimental to us. I think it's going to be a detriment to us women on the planet. Things are not going to get easier. They're going to get much, much harder. That respect and that honor that we want will not exist. The rules, the law of the rules are going to be much more stricter. It's going to be what we're going to feel that's going to go more against us than what we really want. I think more to the question, we need to speak to women and be more truthful with each other and really take the responsibility of what truly is happening, and taking the responsibility to really want to change and to really want to shift. We need to take responsibility, have that awareness, care for one another, right? Care for one another. So I think that's a really big question. I mean, I can have a whole class on that question.
Yeah, it is a big question. And it's interesting because we had another question that came in previously, which is kind of around that subject. It's like, why is it important as women to come together? And this particular person says, I prefer the company of men. But again, it's to what you're talking about now, having respect for one another. And, why do we prefer the company of a man, but then we're moaning about the men?
Right. I can relate to that. I grew up what some people would say, believe it or not, to be a tomboy, right? That's a term. My best friend growing up, and many of my friends growing up, were boys, men, right until high school. My best friend in high school was a man. And speaking for myself, but I also think speaking for many other women, is that we have a comfort around men because they don't judge as much, and they're much more accepting of who we are, and they don't take things as serious as women do. So it is much easier to be around them because we feel more relaxed. When we are with women, in the company of a woman, in this case for this question, we feel much more threatened by each other. We feel much, much more threatened. We are judged more often and harshly, and we're not accepted as easily. And I think, for us to, how can we fix it? Why do we need to work together? Well, in my past interviews, women's energy, we are the leading energy. We set the tone for the planet. We set the tone for the planet because we are able to give birth. And we set the tone for any one situation. And I believe I said something in the past to every man's action or inaction has first come from a woman. So it's either come from his mother, it's come from his aunt, it's come from his sister, it's come from a friend that's a woman or another woman in the workforce, wherever. But his reaction or his inactions came from the energy of a woman. So whatever energy the woman sets or the tone that we set is what the man will go by. It's how he will react and then act, right? So because we set the tone, it's important that we get ourselves on the same page so we can work together in the same tone and talk to each other. Because if we all talk to women, why do we judge each other? Why do we judge each other so harshly? Why do we not accept each other? Because we don't. We really don't. Why is it that we can't get into a circle, talk about life and have fun and feel freedom, feel comfortable in our own skin, not feel threatened? Why is it that we can't do that? What is it within the layers of our own being that we feel that? And I think for some of us, it's different. I think for all of us, but I think for some of us, we have trauma, we have hurt, we have unsettled feelings, and that self-worthy piece comes up. That self-worthiness of ourselves. We don't know our worthiness. We don't know how much we are worth. We feel that we are not good enough. And these are all things, is the dialogue that we tell ourselves. And then we think, or then we feel that we see it in others, because it's what we see within ourselves. So it's that self-dialogue that goes on, the acceptance of self, feeling confident, right? So how do we also, this applies to the last question, how do we shift it? Having more confidence, feeling comfortable in our skin, feeling empowered, feeling so sure of ourselves. Because when a woman is sure of herself, she is not afraid of acceptance. She's not afraid of it. And she's okay with judgment. She doesn't fall into it. She doesn't start to speak of it. She's just okay with it because she's so sure of herself. She doesn't let it in. So for us, yes, we have to get out of the comfort zone. Yes, it's okay for, of course, being with a man, and our friends are men, and they're better company. But we have to ask ourselves, why is that? And how can you change it within yourself? How can us women shift it? This is why we need to work together. We need to start flowing our energy together so we can start healing these traumas. We can start healing this self-worth aspect to things, and having that confidence and that empowerment, and understanding as a woman, how do we flow our energy and what does it mean? Because I think we've lost that as well, right? Having that understanding what our energy is meant to do on this planet. And we're a little bit lost in it, I believe.
It's interesting because I had a question before, and somebody just commented here. I had a question before, which was related to what you were just saying then. How can we heal the competitiveness between the women? They sometimes feel attacked at work, like they have to fit in. How can I be accepted by them? And I think you answered that, didn't you? It's that changing within ourselves.
Yes, because we can't look for it out there.
Yeah.
Because some of the women don't even know what they're doing. They don't even understand. They don't realize how they are acting. And maybe some of them do. And maybe that's just a coping mechanism for themselves, right? Maybe that's a coping mechanism that they are using to help themselves, to cope, and feeling probably the same way that other woman is feeling. See, this is when women share, when we sit down and share, when we sit down and share as women, we leave ourselves vulnerable and we share. We come to many conclusions that we're all feeling the same way or very similar to. But what happens is that we don't talk about it because we become too vulnerable. And how we deal with it is that we start having these coping mechanisms of judging, not being accepted, having this competitiveness. Now, competitiveness, when we look at that, it's not a bad thing. But in this case, if we're competing against each other in the sense of I'm better than you, and I want to be better than you, and I'm better looking than you, and all this kind of stuff that we all talk about, we all know what that is. So I'm not going to list it all. Then we have to look within ourselves. Again, we go back to ourselves and say, well, why do we have to leave that impression? Why do I have to compete against, woman over here? Why do I have to compete against her? Why are we doing it? For what purpose is it serving? Is it making me feel good? Is it giving me a false perception of things? Do I actually feel good from it? Right? So again, it goes into this whole big circle of healing, having confidence. What does our energy as a woman, as a feminine on this planet mean? How are we supposed to wield that energy to help us gain all these things, gain the empowerment, gain the confidence, gain the self-worth, right? Heal, right? How do we heal? Does that answer that? Or
it really does. It really does. And we are over time. I can't believe it. I know.
I can't believe it.
I know. So we had a comment as well around that, and it said, I've always compared myself to other women because I didn't see my own beauty. I only saw theirs, and it made me feel inadequate. So,
yes.
There's lots of, I think lots of us can relate to that. And
yes.
Just as what you were talking about then, it's, it's a hot topic.
Yes, it's recognizing ourselves. So when all these things are happening, it's always take it back to yourself.
Yeah.
Because you have control of your own life. They only have control of your own life if you allow them to.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. We've enjoyed it so much. Yeah. And I hope that you're going to be out of lockdown soon. I heard that, you are slowly coming out in Canada.
Maybe. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yes, fingers crossed. But I wanted to take a moment to, say thank you to all the women and that are out there that are, always seeking more and wanting more. And I'm happy to be here and always supporting and just helping guide.
Thank you, Divina Franca. That's amazing. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody else for tuning in. And we will see you all again soon.
Yeah.
Take care now.
Thank you, Divina, Kate.